What's going on? I'm Andrew from Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. I'm at Amoeba, and this is what's in my bag. Okay, so this is Fred Again, Actual Life 2. I first heard about Fred Again during the pandemic when the first one of these came out. I was actually looking for the first one. I mean, pretty much everything in this series I've been into and have had listened to the singles off of them, so I'm excited to dig into this one. He's an amazing piano player. I think he's actually like a classically trained piano player, plus he does this amazing sampling and work with, like where he'll, at least it's my understanding, he'll find clips of, things that he loves online, people doing spoken word, et cetera, and he'll translate that into his songs and pitch things and time them so that it turns into these beautiful sort of often ambient kind of like dance pop music. It's really good. Highly recommend this.
When the sun comes shining through, when the sun comes shining.
This was on my list when I heard I was going to get to do this. It's Bob Dylan.
This kind of love, I'm lovesick.
Obviously, I grew up listening to Bob Dylan. My parents were both, of the generation, and my dad was at Woodstock, and I didn't know anything about this record until 2 years ago. And I was writing my book and had recently lost a very close friend of mine, and I was listening to a Daniel Lanois podcast, and he had sort of just like gone through his career and his history and the records that he had made. And I remember I was working in Joshua Tree, so I went and I made like a playlist of the songs that he was talking about and the albums that he had talked about. He had done Oh Mercy and Time Out of Mind for Dylan. And there's a song on this record that might be one of my favorite songs of all time called Not Dark Yet. And it kind of got me through like a pretty weird moment. It's kind of like sitting alone in the desert writing a book and grieving a little bit, and this record came through in a clutch. So glad to have it on vinyl.
It's not dark yet, but it's getting there.
Jason Isbell, the 400 unit Weathervanes.
Did you ever love a woman with a death wish? Something in her eyes like flipping off a light switch.
This, I think, is the most recent one that he put out. I just listened to it for the first time this week. His solo album, Southeastern, has like long been my sort of high bar of like just beautifully written songs. He's just such a great songwriter. And I just finished the documentary that he put out, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into some new Jason Isbell. There are a handful of songs on this one that I sort of fell in love with right off the bat. The opening track, Death Wish, and this other song on the B-side, Cast Iron Skillet. He's one of the best lyricists, I think, alive today. And now I got a new one of his records.
Don't wash the cast iron skillet. This town won't get no better, will it?
So this is Counting Crows, August and Everything After.
Mr. Jones and me tell each other fairy tales.
I'd say there are, I don't know, maybe 5-10 records that for me are like the things I was listening to when I was really starting to write music. And Counting Crows for me was like, having been raised, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so most of my music early on was like handed down to me by my older brothers and sisters and by my parents. And Counting Crows in a way I think was like kind of the first band that like I discovered on my own. Like I saw them on Saturday Night Live when I was, I don't know, maybe 11, 10. And it was just like, what is this music? And it's sort of built into my DNA and my songwriting is the way this record made me feel, and always wanting to kind of pass that feeling on to people when I write my own songs. And surprisingly, I don't own it on vinyl, and so I'm glad to get it here. But I got to meet Adam Duritz on our last tour that I was on. He's friends with Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional, and like I wandered into Chris's dressing room in New York to be like, hey, I hope you have a good show. And he's like, hey, meet my friend Adam. And I was like, And as I'm shaking his hand, I just like did the full fanboy, like, I know who you are. And I have a picture of him photobombing my 8-year-old daughter at the time, which is a prized possession now.
I can't see nothing around here.
Pretty much everything R.E.M. was formative for me. This record was big for me in middle school. I remember like locking myself in the attic with the family computer and playing this over and over and over again. The second show I ever saw was R.E.M. on the Monster tour. I think it was the last show their drummer, or the last tour their drummer played with them, and that record I have at home. So I figured I would bolster my collection of R.E.M. albums, but I've just always thought that they're one of the most credible, artful bands of my sort of like the alternative genre since I, started following it, and I'm a huge fan.
Is there a particular song on there that you like?
Oh my God, all of them, truthfully. I mean, Drive, the opening track, I don't know if you remember, like there's a music video for that track, which is just, I think it's just Michael Stipe crowd surfing, like the whole video. And it's sort of like the first thing that put the bug into my, I say ear, but it was the first thing I saw that made me like, I want to crowd surf now. And that's why I do it so often. Man on the Moon.
If you believe they put a man on the moon.
Night Swimming, I think, is probably my favorite on this record. It's like piano driven, like very much a ballad, but like vivid lyrics.
Night swimming deserves a quiet night.
So this is Sylvan Esso.
I was gonna die young. Not gonna wait for you.
They are probably my favorite modern band as of now. I feel like they do kind of a lot of why I like Fred again is why I like Sylvan Esso. It's this sort of combination of really beautiful lyrics, really beautiful vocals, but it has this insane production behind it. I think that Sanborn, Nick Sanborn I think he's kind of the production end, and then Amelia, they're married from what I understand, and but I think he's one of the greatest producers out right now. It's just this like hybrid of electronic and organic instruments and really amazing singing that's like very dry, and it's not like the vocals aren't overproduced. And their record Free Love, which came out I think in 2020, was huge for me. Incredible tunes, Die Young and Radio. I think Radio might be the most brilliant pop radio song in a long time because it just talks shit on the radio and somehow it got airplay, and I think that's ballsy.
Say it to the radio. Say it to the radio. Say it to the radio. 3.3
Wildflowers and all the rest.
You belong among the wildflowers. You belong in a boat out at sea.
It circulates in my top 3 albums of all time. I first got introduced to Wildflowers when I was in middle school. You Don't Know How It Feels was like sort of the big track, and it talked about smoking weed, and I didn't know what that was, but I was like, that seems dangerous, I'm into that.
When you don't know how it feels, you don't know how it feels to be me.
From what I understand and what I've heard from friends is that it's basically all the alternate versions of the songs as they were recorded.
I was in love with a girl on LSD. She'd see things I'd never see.
Tons of live stuff as well. So I'm gonna cherish this, even though it will not fit in my record cabinet. You've officially put me over the edge. I'm gonna have to sell some things after this. But yeah, Petty is my favorite. I have actually a lyric from this record tattooed here as a reminder. Most things I worry about never happen anyway.
Most things I worry about never happen anyway.
And then, for good measure, the Grateful Dead t-shirt.
The words he knows are all obscene, but it's alright. I will get by.
American Beauty was one of the records that my brothers insisted I listen to when I was a kid, and it became a huge favorite.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, that's all empty and I don't care.
And my two oldest brothers and my sisters toured with the Dead. They followed them for summers when they were in college. And there's just sort of a thread of the Grateful Dead through my life and through a bunch of my friends and family, including my managers, who are like the most gigantic Deadheads on earth. So I'm here to make them proud today.
I'm running, but take my time. A friend of the devil is a friend of mine. I get home before daylight, just might get some sleep tonight.
Thank you so much.
Are you kidding? Thank you.
This was great.
Now I'm gonna go give you a bunch of money.
Lying on the hood of your car, we thought we could fly to the planets and stars.